All right, welcome peoples. It's Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. All right, we got an interesting week. I mentioned it in one of my videos last week um, that the payers, Roundhill, Yield Max, Defiance, especially when they have some weeklies and then they have their monthlies. Well, when we get near the end of the month, they coincide. But we also have Yield Max sticking to the Wednesday declaration. And what that does is when you have a holiday on Thursday, then you have ex dividend. This is for Yield Max, right? So you have your Wednesday declaration, then you have ex dividend would normally be Thursday, but it has to move to Friday. You always have one day after. So then your pay can't be till the following Monday, which I think is December 3rd. So what I noticed, and I was a little surprised, so Roundhill and Defiance have been more accommodating, and they've gone in, and so I rushed to get these out to you. But like I said, they also coincide where they have some monthlies where they pay. Um, so maybe Yield Max didn't want to do that. Maybe it was too much work. I'm not sure. So I'll have my Defiance. Sorry, guys. I will have my Yield Max when they come out, which is very likely late tomorrow, early Wednesday before the market. Depends on what time zone you're in, right? All right, so let's jump into Roundhill. So let's go to the detail. That's always important first. I did not update my chart, but I show you the totals. And I'll show you the nuance here. Remember I said before, whenever you have weeklies, you have 52 weeklies, right? Well, if you divide it by 12 months, you get 4 every week would give you 48, so there's 4 extra. Well, every 3 months you get an additional one. So you have every third month has a 5-week pay. And so when you work out that math, right, you get 8 times 4 is 32, and then 5 times 4 is 20, 32 and 20 is 52, just in case you're curious. And then even further, you have to decide, and it caught me off guard a little bit. Look at this. So here's your pay dates. So here's your declare. So do you count the declare or do you count the actual pay date, okay, as to being a 4 or 5 week? Now, I can tell you when it comes down to December, they have some rules. Well, it really is more in their fiscal year, but it may continue in the payments, right? So these ETFs that distribute income are incentivized, or if they don't distribute all their remaining income that they made during the year, minus of course their fees that they charge, the 0.99 if you're Yield Max or 1.28 if you're in the YMAX, YMAG, ulti type designations, right? When you have more activity because you have so many funds underneath it, then those are the ones that charge 1.28. And Defiance is somewhere in there along with Roundhill. They're all pretty competitive in that 1%, slightly sub 1 or slightly over 1. Doesn't really matter if you're getting a good yield. It might matter if the yield was 3%, right? All right. So what I meant by that nuance is, look, you have your pay date on November 1 here. So do you count that as a declaration? You know what you're going to get, or do you count when it pays? So all I'm saying is when you get into December, there's a lot of times they want to get that payment into December, and they may even move it as well. Like, look, this week, we really should have been 13, 20, 27, but then your pay date would be out on December 3rd. So here's your net. Let me get to your numbers because that's what you want to see. So very low relative. I mean, we've been lower at 15. Here's another 18. But clearly, excuse me, but clearly these are a low payment this week, right? I don't know if it's because it's fewer days. I hadn't thought through that, right? But you got an 18.2% yield. Um, Trading at 53.03 for the S&P 500 of Roundhill, known as XDTE, up a half cent or a half percent, or yeah, a half a dollar. Okay, so I didn't come in here and update these, right? But I counted October as 5 weeks because the distribution declaration date was in October. So somebody can say, no, Bruce had paid. So you guys decide. I'm just trying in my charts, right, to show something. Um, so one way to look at it is the 4 weeks here yielded 93 cents. The 5 weeks, right, the 8 through 12 yielded $1.04. So you can see historically 4 week payers, that's in the lower range. It's 93 cents. So just because we got a very low one this week, I mean, clearly we've had a couple out of just this 7 that have been lower in 4 weeks, right? The green represent 5 week payment months. So technically our November is 4, and one could argue you could flip them. You could move the money a little bit from one to the other and make November the 5 month payer and October the 4. I'll let you guys decide. All right, so let's move down. So QDTE, the NASDAQ 100, let's take a look at that guy. Well, it's total of 1070, and we'll go through the summary spreadsheet. It's not quite as low, right? 221139. Let me just make sure that number is correct. So closer to a 27% yield, right? So more in par. So 27 versus 30, let's look up here, was 18 versus 25. It was up, but only from the previous declaration week, 5 cents. So far in the 4 weeks, 99 cents, right? So we had $1.21. Have we had a 99-cent 4 week? No. So this is low for the NASDAQ 100. Let's go to Russell. Russell always pays well. 327016. 7406, sorry. So a 37% yield, up $1.67. And again, if we count October, we had $1.53 in 5 weeks and $1.33 in just the 4 weeks. So we don't have the luxury of having the history that the other funds have because the Russell is newer. Okay. And on XPay, again, what they do is they declare ahead of time, right? So this is a return of capital focus and a set payer that's targeting 20% yield. And look at this. That's about what the yield is. They come out and they tell you, okay, these are the payments for November and December. So at the end of the year, the very beginning of January, they'll come out and very likely tell you what the next 12 payments are going to be. I don't know if they'll limit it to a quarter at a time. Obviously, they're trying to look at this and they're trying to come out with the targeted 20% yield, but I like it. I mean, you kind of know what you're doing. Now, there's no guarantee should the underlying, right, the S&P 500 crash dramatically, then they're not going to be able to. They could do an ROC payment, but then your NAV would get killed. So they're really trying to keep the NAV and get this 20% yield, but they're going to be somewhat at the mercy of the underlying market. But I like it. It's an interesting fund. All right, so let's take a look at Roundhill, and this kind of tells you what's happening in the game, right? This is not as relevant. So when you see a yield like this, it's saying, oh, well, we went up, right? We went from 57.3 to 58.4, and I think it's 59 now. So when you, again, the sample size is so small, when you project that kind of a NAV increase, when you annualize it, that's what sends it up, right? the gain or loss annualized is 26, and this is 23. This is very likely to be flat. So they're going to target you at the 23. All right, what did we have? Let's look at XDTE. It's now up to 1634, right? This is the one that only had 18% on the weekly payment. And we have 23. So again, higher here. That's 7 points. But look over here. Why is that? Well, we face the same thing. Let me make sure I want to get the right number here. Let me put in QDTE. I know I did the first one correct, the XDTE. 4260. All right, I knew that I hadn't done this one. Okay, and let's look at our. I'm on my second screen, guys. Just getting the quote, so it's not that relevant. 45. I plugged it into one place, but I didn't link it. Okay, so a little better here. So the problem gets to be this continues down, right? So we have a 8.27 loss. Again, I know you guys buy it on different dates, so figure out your own dates. But if you bought it at inception, which is, 8 months ago, a little more than 8 months ago, you paid 46.44. It's currently 42.60. So there's where you get your NAV loss. And I know a lot of people, you get into controversy on what people want to accept or their own reality, I call it. So we have a 20. All right. So let me go through. So dividend returns. Now look at this guy. Because he has a small base, he's actually the leading dividend king if you compare percentages, right? Look at this annualized. Again, small sample base. I think these two are very close, right? But when we go look at their individuals, they had a 37% payout. Look at this. They haven't had a single payout. There's one just at 30, right? So 30s and 40s. And let's look at the NASDAQ over this same 7 or 8 weeks, right? Since RDTE has been out, you're seeing there's a 50, but there's a 24, a 26, a 25, a 24. There weren't any in the other sample. So we're still leading with the Russell 200. And if you look at a chart over the last 6 months or 3 months, you'll see the Russell has been slightly outperforming. There was a period earlier in the year that the NASDAQ 100 was outperforming everything, right? All right, so let's finish up on our distribution. I've got some YBTCE and their Bitcoin and their Ether, which are phenomenal, as you'd expect, right, with Bitcoin having been up. So again, sample size causes this to be distorted. If you buy a fund for 1 month and it goes up, the NAV price goes up 5%, and you project that out times 12 months, you would have a 60% gain. See, they're showing a 41.42% annualized gain. Probably won't be that, right? This one's hanging on slightly ahead. This one's down 11. So all of a sudden, this almost 10-point difference in yield gets knocked down because of this, right? They were 23% to 16. This isn't relevant because the sample size is so few months, right? Look here, we have 264 days, but we only have 77 days for this guy. These were both launched here. That's how I'm able to do all this stuff. So I just show you my work table data here. All right, people, you know about XPay, the steady pair. Let's go over here. Here's YBTC. So here's your distribution, right? So on 11, and they did the same kind of thing. They went a little early this week to get their pay date on Friday, right? To get it in the month. So they did $1.77, which is a 39% yield on the monthly. And look at the price. The price is up $7. So they're killing it on that. So here's our summary. Our summary says so far, if you bought this at inception on their BTC fund, yeah, it was 48.54. It's now 53.62. So we've got a 42% annualized dividend yield. But again, they're back at 313 days. So that only goes to 49. As they get to 365, they're equal, right? So same thing here. This 10.47 NAV increase is a 12%. So a nice return. But again, we all know how volatile crypto is. So I updated my Ether, and I just put them in both the same. That's probably what I'll end up doing here. So we're into 78 days. Here is the current situation, right? We've collected seven. Well, let's do the individual one. So here we are. We got $1.65, which is a 36.75 for Ether, right? Ethereum. So up to 63 on the monthly. Again, these are monthly, guys, right? They're not weeklies. So look at this yield though on Ethereum. Now it has again. Why is it? It's showing a 60% gain. It almost follows what I said. Hey, this thing was incepted. The inception date was just about 2.5 months ago. So if you've owned it, you've had a 12.92% gain over 78 days if you bought it at inception. Okay. And then when that projects out to be annualized, you multiply it times 4,679 and you get 60% NAV gain. Now, will that be what it is? Probably not. Okay. Look at this dividend annualized, right? Again, you've gotten 16.28. But with a small sample, if you had a bigger sample, these numbers would be the same, but this would be up here in the 40, 50, 60%, right? So when you add these two together, you get way up there. They're ahead of BTC. But look at BTC. It's got a much, it's since 118. This is very close to 365 days, right? We're 85% there. All right, guys. So that's what I got for you. Hopefully you enjoy this. Let me know in your comments if you want to see anything else, you want me to lay it out any different, or at least suggest. It doesn't mean I will, but I always take into considerations. I tell the story of the woman who asked me if she could see it weekly, right? And so I said, sure. I just put in some weekly charts on that. All right, guys. Again, this is Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. Let me get Defiance out for you. And please note that YieldMax is sticking to their dates, right? So your payday will be December 3rd, and your declaration will be Wednesday. Since Thanksgiving is a holiday, you'll have ex-dividend on Friday, then the Monday into December will get you paid on the YieldMax. The YieldMax, YMAX, and the Group A, I believe. Yeah, Group A is where we're headed. Okay, guys, that's what I got for you. Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's for fun and entertainment. See ya. Bye for now.